Papa Kenn, and welcome to episode 25 of Discovering Doctor Who. That's right, it's the quarterversary. Yeah, let's go with that. The quarterversary, basically, of Discovering Doctor Who, and today the episode I'm going to be discussing is Gridlock. Episode 3 of the third season of the new Doctor Who. And this was actually a very impressive episode for me. So let's get right into my favorite parts of the episode. The first of which was... it takes place both the beginning and the end of the episode, and it's the talk of Gallifrey. Gallifrey? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. But basically, the Time Lord's planet. And just the way the Doctor describes it in both cases, both the parts where he's lying to Martha and when he's, coming out and revealing the truth about everything, just the way he describes it, it sounds just like a gorgeous place. And if we ever do get to see Gallifrey, the planet, or actually be on it, I really look forward to those visuals. Now, I don't know whether or not it will actually happen since it's gone, but I don't know. It's time travel and everything, so maybe there's a way to go back to it. I don't know, but if it does happen, I cannot wait to see those visuals. Now, the second best part of this episode, the second favorite part of this episode, was the sale of these moods, these drugs essentially that affect people's moods essentially. And the fact that one mood, I believe it was bliss, that was developed actually turned into this airborne virus that wiped out the vast majority of humanity on New Earth. I just found that very interesting. And one thing that was a little bit confusing, I'll actually comment on that later, but it has to do with one of the moods and one of the events that takes place in this episode. But yeah, just like the whole concept of those moods and sort of the parallel there between those and the drugs that we have of today, both medical, medicinal, prescribed, and otherwise. It was just, I found that very interesting. Now, the third best part of this episode were, I want to say the Branigans. I believe that was, the Branigans and their cute little kittens. But really, it goes to pretty much all of the characters that we met in the Gridlock, in the traffic jam. Even those that, were just kind of there for a one-off joke. It was just very interesting and showed a wide variety of people that, have apparently survived this horrible virus that wiped out most people on the planet. But most of all, it's like the two groups, the Branigans, because, what's his name, Thomas Kincade, he's quite hilarious. His wife, Valerie, seemed like a very interesting character. I doubt we'll ever see the two of those again, but if we do, I think that would be interesting to see where their lives progress. And they're little kittens. Like, they didn't even try to make them like anthropomorphic cat kids or anything. It was just adorable little kittens, and it was adorable, and I love them. I sound weird right now, and I don't care. I love kittens. And then there was also the Cassini sisters, who were actually, obviously married to each other. I really liked them, and they were very, very snappy, very snarky with with Thomas Kincade. I just really liked that aspect. Now, the fourth best part of this episode was when the song The Old Rugged Cross was starting to be played, and all of the people started singing that. And the reason I like this part of the episode is because I assume that it's being sung. Well, the characters are singing it because it is a form of comfort for them. It's a form of them essentially all comforting themselves in this time of perpetual gridlock, probably never going anywhere, in a traffic jam that has lasted around 20 years, I believe they say. But the way that I saw it was, as more and more people started joining in, more voices, it just became this beacon of hopelessness for all these people. And it sounded like the music and everything was getting darker and darker as it kept going on. And it reached a point where it was just legitimately creepy and kind of terrifying. And it's like, I haven't really heard the song being sung that way, and it inspires sort of this fear in me while I'm watching this TV show. I just found that very interesting. And actually, did anyone else get that vibe when the song was in the episode, or is it just me getting that very strange, creepy vibe? Because it was very strong with me while I was watching this episode. Now, the fifth and final, in my opinion, best part of this episode was when Novice Haim went Rambo in the episode. I mean, we don't see a lot of her doing anything, but just to see her, like, in this big cloak and this laser/machine gun, I just thought that was such a cool moment in the episode. And I mean, she just seems like a, pretty badass character in those moments. I really like that, and it was just one moment that, with everything that goes on in this episode, I honestly do hope that we see her at least one more time. Now, this episode took place, what was it? It was either 5 million or 5 billion years in the future. I guess it technically like the final episode of a trilogy, since technically we've had 3, maybe 4 episodes that all take place in that time span, ending with the death of the Face of Boe, obviously. But if we do get to see her again, I'd be interested to see what she turns into, because, she went from this very sheepish character to a more powerful character, still somewhat sheepish, but it's in a very protective way. So if we see her again, is she going to turn into just this very powerful person? I'd be really interested to see if that happens. If we do see her again, go ahead and let me know down in the comments. Don't reveal any major spoilers, but if we do or if we don't, just let me know down in the comments, because I'm legitimately interested to find out. Now, in this episode, there were some issues, admittedly. The main one being, for me, is that if this virus took out pretty much all of humanity, and it's like that there were very few survivors, but it was airborne, and it took out almost everyone on the surface, or seemingly everyone on the surface. And one of the main reasons why the people aren't getting any help is that there's no one up there to run anything. There's no one up there to help them, essentially. Then why were there people running these pharmacies above ground in the beginning of the episode? Like, shouldn't they all be dead as well? Or is it that since it was sort of in the slums, it sort of was beyond the reach of the virus or something like that? I don't know. That's just a very strange plot hole for me, and it's not a huge negative by any means. It's just confusing, because if everyone up top is supposed to be dead and everyone that survived is supposed to be down in this gridlock, even though the virus is essentially dead now, what's the deal there? I don't completely understand that part, and it does kind of bother me. And the second issue I had is that the girl that comes and wants the forget mood, or the she wants to forget what happened to her parents, or basically forget what happened to her parents. My issue with this is, and it's just semantics, forgetting is not a mood. Forgetting is something you do, so wouldn't that really be considered something else? Or maybe I don't know, maybe I'm just forgetting and it was called something else, but if all these things are being called moods, happiness, sadness, blah, 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 how does forgetting fit in there? Or was it forgetfulness? But even that's not a mood, that's just... you're being forgetful. That's a state of being. It's not a mood. Or am I just reading way too much into this? But yeah, second minor gripe is just the semantics there with how forgiveness sort of fits in there. And now the quote of this episode was actually pretty hard to pick, because there were, again, several rather quotable lines throughout the episode. Some funny, some very deep and interesting. And the one that I chose is when the Doctor is admitting to Martha that he lied to her and why he did it. And the quote goes like this: "I lied to you because I liked it. I could pretend just for a bit. I could imagine they were still alive underneath the burnt orange sky. I'm not just a Time Lord. I'm the last of the Time Lords. The Face of Boe was wrong. There's no one else." And there's actually more to the quote, but that felt like the most powerful portion of it, especially since the next segment sort of leads into the ending of the episode and it gets not really cut off, but it sort of just trails off. And I found that to be just one of those very humbling moments in the series. Another one of those monologues that the Doctor gives, like he'd given several to Rose in the past, and this is the first, I feel, major monologue that he's really given to Martha, and hopefully it's going to build up from there, and they'll start to establish a more powerful relationship as, you know, the Doctor and companion, because I feel like this was the step that sort of took him out of the cold, very standoffish manner that he was in the previous episode, where he was just, you know, sort of being whatever about her while, you know, still fawning over Rose. I felt like this was, a good step, and that this quote sort of symbolized that, while also showing his feelings that, you know, the Face of Boe telling him that he's not alone is wrong. And maybe I'm reading too much into it there and I'm babbling a bit, but yeah, I really like that quote, and it has me really interested to see what's going on. Is the Doctor really alone or not? But actually, I'm going to get into that in here in just a little bit. It's sort of on some of my ideas that have come up from this episode, or some of the questions I have. But first, my thoughts on this episode overall. I thought it was a really good episode. This is probably, I would say, since the Christmas special, probably the strongest episode of the season so far. Obviously, there haven't been very many, but I really liked it. It was one of those that, even though I haven't been a huge fan of the episodes that have gone way into the future, I still really enjoyed the way that this one played out, and I felt like it had very much that human element to it, even though there were cat people, which are humanoid at least, but it had a strong human personal element to it, and I really liked that aspect, and it showed us some growth, at least in my eyes, in the relationship between Martha Jones and the Doctor. So, overall, a great episode. It may end up being, one of maybe the lesser ones overall, but like I said, so far it's definitely the strongest. Yeah, I would say the strongest episode of the season so far. Now, that does bring me to some of my questions. What did the Face of Boe mean when he said, "You are not alone"? Is Saxon a Time Lord? Is that what's going on? Is that what you all are trying to tell me? Actually, don't tell me. Don't tell me whether or not I'm right about that, because I don't want to know. But what if Saxon is a Time Lord? Everyone, thank you very much for joining me on this 25th episode of Discovering Doctor Who. Looking very much forward to getting into the next one and to see if any of my questions will be answered, like, who is Mr. Saxon? Is he a Time Lord? And will we ever see Gallifrey, whatever. Anyway, everyone, I will see you next time on the next Discovering Doctor Who.